Whether at home or abroad, the Scots have always loved a challenge. So what use could be made of 10 million acres of wild heather moorland, other than provide a home for the red grouse and its relatives? High up in the Perthshire hills, the picking gang starts at 6 a.m, before the midges wake up. Bruce and Scott Williams thought they could make themselves a nice wee brew from all this heather.
There was no preconception of it turning it into a big business. It was a homebrew recipe that had come from the homebrew shop, and we tried to make it in the West Highlands and sell it to pubs. And it took on a life of its own, so there was no plan to make it a business. It just became one.
We sold it only on cask, which is like the real ale you'll see on hand pull in pubs. And then we kind of got the courage or the stupidity together to decide we're going to brew a big batch and bottle it. So once we bottled it and the first batch went out there, we had a really good response, and we had people like Harrods down in London decided they wanted to stock it because they liked the story and the imagery of the product.
A brew from heather is mentioned throughout the Middle Ages, and the 18th century traveller Thomas Pennant drank heather ale in Islay. It was part of a rural tradition known as home brew, when all kinds of local herbs and plants were used to flavour the fermentation. Bruce and Scott have only 5 weeks during August and September to bring the sacks of bell and ling heather back to this small traditional brewery.
You boil the barley juice with heather flowers and myrtle, and that flavours the ale, and that's boiled for about an hour and a half. After the boil, we line a big heather back, which is like almost a big sieve, with fresh heather flowers, and then we open the bottom of the boiling pan, and all the hot liquor pours into the heather back and infuses like a kind of a herbal tea. It should infuse for about an hour in there before we then cool it down, take it into a big fermentation vat where it's fermented for about a week before we cask it or rack it into bottles.
This is what makes it a real ale, quite different in character from mass-produced beers and lagers. Fraoch gets its name from the Gaelic for heather. It's shipped all over the world, from Canada to Hong Kong, and the Campaign for Real Ale have voted it one of its ales of the year.
There is evidence, and according to archaeologists, of a beverage brewed with heather in it going back as far as 2000 BC. So come the millennium, we're going to be celebrating the 4000th anniversary of heather ale.
A heady thought which puts all other drinks into perspective. Where else could you get a Stone Age pint but in Scotland?
Oh, that's good, nice.
You may take our freedom, but you'll never take our heather.